The Kidnapped Bride. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing story that resonates with love, courage, resilience, and sacrifice. It is about an abducted Christian bride who was stolen by Muslim invaders from South Sudan and sold as a slave in West Sudan. It has been written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. Ahmed. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on similar happenings which occurred in southern and western Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, events or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 7. A Dangerous Trip to Africa. Meanwhile, the groom, Malwal, was left with no choice but to risk traveling to South Sudan to search for his missing bride, Ayan. Before leaving the United States of America, he left no stone unturned as he tried to solve the mysterious disappearance of his beautiful bride. Through a Sudanese church pastor and his community association leader, Malwal was able to contact several people in Sudan and inquire about his lost bride. The investigation took 3 months before the bewildered groom finally made up his mind and decided to travel to Africa. After heroic efforts, the pastor of the Sudanese church and the president of the association were able to raise enough money for Malwal to buy his plane ticket and carry with him an additional $200. Before the groom traveled from America to Kenya, he gathered some conflicting information about his missing bride. Some Sudanese in the United States were able to convince their relatives and friends living in South Sudan to risk their lives and go to Ayan's village and find out what happened to her. Malwal had to pay these people before convincing them to take the risk. He spent over $1,000 on these informants. Some of them had spent the money on their personal needs and had forgotten about the groom Malwal and his missing bride, Ayan. Only a few of them were honest and went to the disaster-stricken village of Tawila. They found ruin and destruction, which told them nothing and yet everything. An informant concluded that some bad guys attacked the village, killed everyone, and stole the livestock and women. The reporter of such information didn't want to come to a hasty conclusion about who the bad guys were. He reported that the village was destroyed, and the bride most likely perished along with her family. The second informant reported the same, but accused the Muslim Mujahideen invaders who were called the Arab Janjaweed of committing that heinous crime. The third informant blamed North Sudanese army soldiers who often committed such cowardly massacres. The fourth informant produced a possibility that even Malwal refused to believe. He said that a bloody battle broke out between the southern rebels and the villagers over food. The rebels won the battle because they had cannons and machine guns, while the poor villagers used locally bladed weapons such as swords and spears to fight them. When the rebels finished massacring the poor villagers, they took their livestock, food, boys, and girls and then burned the village. The rebels saved the lives of young men and women because they needed more people to join their cause in their war against the Northern Army. So, most likely the bride Ayan is now a rebel fighter in the jungle. There are more speculations and information that have reached the groom's ears about the destruction and devastation of the village and the disappearance of his beautiful bride, but they are not worth mentioning. The Dinka boy Malwal had encountered racial and political problems with the Khartoum government of the Muslim Brotherhood before fleeing Sudan and ending up in India. He knew and understood that he would be arrested at Khartoum International Airport, taken to one of the ghost houses, and tortured to death by cruel Islamic security men or members of the Janjaweed militia known in Khartoum as the Rapid Support Forces. For this reason, he could not travel directly to Sudan. Instead, he landed in Kenya hoping to smuggle himself across the border into South Sudan. Many Sudanese friends in America tried to prevent him from making this dangerous journey to his motherland. They said that if he managed to avoid the rebels in the forest, he could become a victim of the Sudanese government army, which includes a large number of northern Muslim Arabs and Africans from Darfur. The government army consists of military soldiers and volunteer Islamic fighters known as mujahideen. Those Muslim volunteer fighters are more dangerous and cause more problems for Christian Southerners than army soldiers. They view the Southerners as infidel Christians and enemies of God and His messenger, and therefore they consider their fighting in South Sudan to be a war of jihad for spreading Islam in the way of Allah. They came to South Sudan to spread Islam and fight the so-called infidel enemies of God. They wanted to Islamize the Christian South. They loved to die as martyrs because of their promise to 72 virgins in paradise. The Quran made them believe that God would marry each of them to 72 virgins in eternal paradise. Those girls are believed to be exceptionally beautiful creatures and eternal virgins. A hadith attributed to the Prophet Muhammad states that whenever a man has sex with one of his 72 lovely wives, she will miraculously become a virgin again. Every time a man's penis breaks her hymen, when he inserts it in her pussy and fucks her, she goes back to being a virgin repeatedly, and that's forever. It is also said that the Virgin of Heaven does not urinate, defecate, or menstruate. Whatever she eats and drinks, it comes out of her body as sweat, and her sweat smells like musk. A man cannot make her conceive a child even if he has sex with her 1,000,000 times. Besides these 72 beautiful virgins, the Quran promised Muslim believers that there would be rivers of wine, milk, and honey in the Garden of Paradise. I wonder what the virgin would do after she immersed herself in rivers of wine and became dead drunk. Muslim women are not allowed to go to jihad for the sake of God. Islam says that their jihadist wars must be fought on their beds with their husbands. The more a Muslim wife suffers from the pain of sexual intercourse, the more she strives for the sake of God. Muslim women do not have promises from virgin men in the paradise of virgins. The Prophet of Islam promised in an authentic hadith that most Muslim women would go to hell. Finally, the groom Mawal also warned of the possibility of falling victim to the Arab Janjaweed. The Janjaweed militias are more brutal and dangerous than the Muslim Mujahideen in the Sudanese army. At least the Muslim Mujahideen are fighting against the non-Muslim Christians of the south, the infidels, but the Janjaweed kill indiscriminately both Muslims and non-Muslims. Therefore, it is safer for the Christian groom, Mawal, to travel to hell than to the Democratic Republic of Satan, euphemistically called Sudan. However, all these dangers did not prevent the groom from making his perilous journey to Sudan in search of his beautiful, missing Dinka bride, Ayan. Chapter 8. In a hut of the good old African man. The Dinka groom Mawal has arrived in Kenya 3 months after the sad day he expected to meet his beloved bride, Ayan, at the international airport in the United States of America. He landed at Nairobi International Airport one morning with a still bleeding heart, a confused mind, and a troubled conscience. When he arrived in Kenya, he had less than a couple of $100 in his pocket. He obtained the address of a Sudanese family living in Nairobi so they could house him for a day or two before he resumed his perilous journey to the Sudanese border. However, the miserable condition of the family convinced him to leave the next day. From Nairobi, Mawal traveled by truck to the Sudanese border. The closest town he can get to in Sudan is Naras. He spent his second night sleeping outdoors. He found a small, deserted hut and slept nearby. He was very exhausted and tired that night. When he woke up in the morning, he found his bag, wallet, and watch stolen. As a result, he became penniless on the 3rd day after arriving in Africa. For a healthy young man his age, begging is shameful. He just decided to continue his journey on foot until he reached Naras. Very few people walk into the forest. There is a possibility that wild beasts will attack him and eat him alive. Nor did this danger prevent Malwal from continuing his advance towards Sudan. His knowledge of this part of his motherland is little. He lived most of his time in the southwestern part of Sudan. So he walked all day and did not rest for a long time. He was told that if he kept going quickly on foot, he would reach the first town in Sudan before sunset and darkness. Towards evening, Malwal entered the town of Naras, dragging his exhausted body. He is very thirsty and starving. An old man saw him and greeted him. "Peace be upon you, Banjas." Malwal doesn't like the religiously laden greeting, or the fact that he was greeted with a bang like a little kid. However, his parents always told him to respect the old man even if he worshipped Satan. Malwal replied, "Peace be upon you, grandfather. Where did you come from and where are you going?" "Oh, Banjas." His young guest was waiting for his answer. The old man stared at him with his eyebrows furrowed. Malwal spoke calmly, "I am already a married man, grandfather. I came to South Sudan to search for my lost bride." The old man scratched his gray beard, revealing 2 missing front teeth. How is the bride lost if she doesn't run away with another man? It never occurred to Malwal that his missing bride, Ayan, might have eloped with another man. He had never asked himself whether she really loved him or not. Does she actually have another lover, but her parents forced her to marry him? Before Malwal could remove his doubts, the old man spoke again. "My 2 young wives recently left me and went to the refugee camp in Nairobi. I heard that they met 2 other young men at the camp and had sex with them. The latest news I heard about them is that they married these 2 men, and they all immigrated to the country of the Kawaja in America." The old man shrugged his thin shoulders and hung his head in sadness at the loss of his 2 wives. "Have you divorced them already, grandfather?" Malwal could barely contain his curiosity. Once again, the old man raised and lowered his shoulders, breathing deeply. "Not yet, my son, but what will the word divorce do from my mouth?" Malwal frowned and said, "What they did is wrong." The old man smiled and patted Malwal on the shoulder. "A woman's heart does not know right and wrong. Only the fear of being beaten by the father or husband makes a woman do what is right and not wrong." Malwal shook his head, feeling the color rising to his face. "Women are human beings, grandfather. They do right and wrong like men." The old man smiled and raised his thin eyebrows. "You're still a little kid, my boy. You have no experience with women yet. Even the Holy Quran warns us against the deception of women because their deception is great." Malwal wanted to argue further, but he thought the old man was crazy. Why does he believe that every human being on the face of the earth is a Muslim like him and believes in his Quran and the Islamic religion? Instead, he asked, "You haven't told me yet, Grandpa, how far is Kobita City from here?" The old man shook his head. His eyes widened. "Why do you want to go to Kopita?" "I am looking for a way to reach Bahr el Ghazal province." Shaking his head, Grandpa spoke slowly. "Bahr el Ghazal. Why did you go to Kenya then? You will be killed before you reach Juba City." Malwal nodded and said resolutely, "I have to go there no matter what happens to me." The old man pushed himself up, leaning on his gnarled wooden staff. "But you took the wrong path. You should have come through Uganda or Ethiopia." Then he waved the stick in the air. "From there a UN helicopter could take you to Bahr el Ghazal. I heard that the Red Cross and UN staff are helping people fly for free in their helicopters to Bahr el Ghazal province." Malwal is very tired. He rubbed his eyes before answering. "I had no choice, grandfather. Someone in America gave me the address of his relatives in Kenya. I don't know anyone in Uganda and Ethiopia." The old man leaned close to Malwal, hot breath blowing across his face. Go to Kobita City and try to find those NGOs to help you get to Bahr el Ghazal. Malwal looked around, putting one hand on his forehead to protect his eyes from the setting sun. How far is Kobita City? Grandpa showed his toothless smile. A day if you run like a deer, and a week if you walk like an old elephant like me. Malwal thought for a moment and said, one day if I walk fast. Grandpa pursed his lips with his finger to the side of his mouth. Maybe two, but it shouldn't take more than that for a young guy like you. Grandpa, Malwal said in a voice that sounded like someone who might die at any moment if he didn't get immediate help. I have no money or shelter. I've been walking all day and need to rest the night before I resume walking tomorrow. The old man opened his arms, almost falling off his balance. Then come to my hut and keep me company all night. You are young and strong, and you can fight a lion or a thief if they come to attack me while I am asleep. After saying those words, the old man took a handful of snuff and threw it into his toothless mouth. He tried to laugh but couldn't, his mouth was too full of the snuff. Chapter 9. The Fall of the City of Kobita. That night, the groom, Malwal, slept like a dead man. The good old man continued talking to himself for an hour, thinking that his guest was still awake and listening to him. Since he had brought his guest to his debilitated hut, the old man had talked about one subject. Malwal must accept his advice to return to Kenya and fly back to America. With heavy eyes, the sad groom rejected the advice and fell asleep. The old man went on to explain why his guest should not risk his life and go to the city of Kobita. If the groom, Malwal, had stayed awake for half an hour and heard the horrific stories told by the old man, he would have abandoned his plan to find his lost bride, Ayan, and return safely to America. The next morning, the kind old man had difficulty waking Malwal from sleep, but it was the guest who asked his host to wake him before sunrise. Before he left that morning, Malwal had breakfast with the generous old man. Then the good southern gentleman packed up some water and a little food and gave them to his guest. Fortunately, the heavy rainy season ended a few weeks before Malwal arrived in Sudan. By then, the highway into the forest had dried out, making walking less difficult. Malwal walked as fast as he could and rested only briefly. He is in a hurry to reach Kobita City before sunset. On the way, he met an old woman with her daughter and her daughter's 3 children, and she told him that they had been walking for 2 days since they left the city. This news terrified the sad groom and made him hurry. If he had known what awaited him in Kobita City, he might not have been in such a rush to get there. The tragedy occurred just 3 hours before his arrival. Once he reached the outskirts of the city, he was arrested by a government patrol truck and taken away as a prisoner of war. He became a prisoner accused of spying for the Sudan People's Liberation Army. Malwal demanded his release on the grounds that he was an American citizen, but the Arab soldiers beat his face and kicked him with their heavy military boots. Then they threw his semi-conscious body like a sack of grain into their military truck and headed for the city. With his hands and feet tied with ropes, Malwal landed hard on the bed of the truck. As the car sped, his face kept bouncing off the bed of the truck like a football. He constantly begged the soldiers to help him, but they mocked and cursed him instead. Arab soldiers hate spies more than actual southern rebels. Whenever they catch a boy or girl they accuse of spying, they will beat them so they can extract some information from them. Once they are satisfied with interrogating their victims, they will kill them. Because this execution violated the Geneva Convention, the soldiers invented a way to dispose of the dead bodies. There is an old stinking lake near their military base. This lake is used as a burial place for the victims. The citizens of Kobita call it Skeleton Lake. The soldiers would open their victim's stomach and throw his body into the dirty water. To date, no man or woman, young or old, who has been arrested has escaped such a tragic end if accused of espionage. Of course, Christian girls will be raped without marriage on the basis of Islam's teachings about the infidel Christian women, or captive prisoners of war of jihad for the sake of God to spread the Islamic religion in South Sudan. Malwal was one of 6 Southerners arrested that day and taken in for questioning. When he was taken from the truck and thrown into a small room, the American groom found some detainees there. They are all bound with strong ropes. They bleed profusely from head to toe. Some of them had their faces so disfigured by brutal torture that the American boy could not tell whether they were male or female. Likewise, he was dragged like an animal and tied to a wooden pole. The soldiers left the room as soon as they were sure he was securely restrained. When they disappeared, Malwal tried to talk to the other detainees. Either they became deaf and mute due to torture, or they were afraid to talk to him and reveal some of their secrets for fear that he would be a spy spying on them for the benefit of the Arabs. For a week before Malwal's arrest, government soldiers and Southern rebels had been constantly fighting for control of the city. The city of Kobada has become like a piece of bone that 2 mad dogs are fighting over. There are heavy casualties on both sides. For 7 nights the rebels attacked the city. Each time they attacked, they were able to penetrate civilian areas, obtain food supplies, and forcefully recruit new rebels. The government soldiers refrained from shooting at them until they left the city early in the morning. The soldiers then emerged from their hiding places, chased them for several kilometers, and returned to their base. This game of seek and find between a cat and a mouse lasted for 7 nights before the American groom, who had come to Africa to search for his missing bride, was captured. On that day, a few hours after Malwal's arrest, the attack resumed. The rebels came a few hours earlier than usual. The whole city is dark. Every light was turned off by an official army order. Military sirens are constantly ringing. Heavy artillery rained down on the city. The rebels were determined that night, regardless of the extent of the losses, they must be forced by any means to capture the city. The attack focused on the military base where Malwal was detained. His ears were deafened by the constant sound of the bombing. The missiles lit up the small room like a flash of lightning. Malwal concluded that his end had come. After 2 hours, the missiles stopped, but the sounds of machine guns were still heard. He heard the soldiers shouting words of encouragement to each other. Their screams indicated to him that the rebels were remarkably close. One of the Muslim soldiers chanted in Arabic, "O martyrs, strive and thank God for obtaining martyrdom and winning paradise." Another soldier replied, "God is great." Another soldier shouted, "Death is right and life is wrong. When the victory of Allah comes, no one can defeat us. God sent his angels to fight with us and defeat the unclean Christian infidels." These religious words of encouragement did not last long. Malwal began to hear the footsteps of the Arab soldiers fleeing. He expected that some fleeing Muslim soldiers would enter the room and shoot them. Then the captive American groom saw a black figure rushing into the room like a black ghost. The person turned on a battery flashlight and focused it on his face. Malwal closed his eyes and waited for the bullets to reach his body. Instead, he felt his hands and legs being released and heard a voice shouting at him in broken Arabic, "Take this Kalashnikov and fight." Malwal recognized the speaker as a Southerner like himself. He took the gun and waited for further orders. "Our forces have already captured the city. We still need to clean the city of the cowardly Arabs. Kill any enemy Muslim person who comes your way. Even those Southern Christian traitors who fight with the Arabs should be killed." Malwal ran after the rebellious Southerner, who had saved his life, and joined the battle against his wishes. Chapter 10. A sex scandal in the home of the Imam of the Grand Mosque. A year has passed since the Christian girl Ikhlas appeared in a house in front of the mosque, and the neighbors saw her. No one saw the man who brought her there. People knew that she was serving Maulana's wife as a servant. However, Imam Mubarak's family does not pay her a wage for her service and treats her as a slave. At first, she was wearing normal clothes, but then people started seeing her wearing the Islamic abaya and hijab like a Muslim girl. The neighbors concluded that Maulana and his wife had converted her to Islam. This is seen as the honorable Imam and his blessed wife genuinely caring for the girl's soul. What disturbed the neighbors was the fact that the holy Imam kept the beautiful girl in his house without marrying her to anyone before Satan intervened and caused her to fall into the sin of adultery. When Ikhlas came to the Imam's house, the neighbors called her the girl in the Maulana's house. This name was slowly changed and she became the Imam's daughter. Everyone knew that Maulana's four daughters were married and had moved to their husbands' homes. The first daughter married a lawyer, the second married a doctor, the third married a wealthy merchant, and the fourth was favored by God so much that she married a member of the House of Representatives or Parliament in Khartoum. Among his other 3 wives, the blessed Imam has daughters who are married to nobles in society. But then a great scandal occurred, and the holy residence of Imam al-Salih in the city was desecrated. The rumor of the illegitimate pregnancy of Imam Mubarak's daughter began when a neighbor visited Maulana's house late one evening and saw her in her nightgown. It seemed to the visitor that Ikhlas was probably 4 or 5 months pregnant. The lady couldn't believe her eyes until she took the maid aside and inquired about her big stomach. When she confirmed the fidelity of the pregnancy, the lady left the Imam's house as if she had discovered that a member of the Holy Family was afflicted with an incurable contagious disease such as the plague or the coronavirus. She did not even consult the Imam's honorable wife about her astonishing discovery of the scandal. Then she visited 101 houses and spread gossip. Every woman who heard the gossip visited 50 other homes and reported the disturbing news. Like wildfire, the shocking news spread throughout the city at the speed of sound. In less than a week, almost every citizen in the city of El Fasher and the suburbs of the large city learned that the daughter of Maulana Abdul Razak, the Imam of the largest mosque, had become pregnant with an illegitimate child without a husband. Some women are so busy reporting the news that they haven't cooked or cleaned their homes for a week. Although their dirty clothes piled up in piles, this did not hinder their missions. Fathering their daughters for the first time, husbands allowed such freedom to their wives. Men also walk around and meet in groups on the roads and alleys and discuss the scandal that occurred in a house in front of the great mosque. The sex scandal spread at the speed of light, even faster than the fire that destroyed the city of Gaddarif in 1955 in eastern Sudan, which was ignited by a girl in front of the Grand Mosque. Rumors said at the time that Maulana's daughter in the city of Gaddarif, who was born from his blood, committed suicide by burning her body when she became pregnant with a forbidden child, and no one knew who conceived her without the sanctity of permissible Islamic marriage. Only God knows the truth of these rumors. But the neighbors in the city of El Fasher had no difficulty finding out who had gotten the girl pregnant. The perpetrator's words exposed him to his heinous crime, and thus condemned him. More than a dozen men are ready to swear on the Holy Quran in the Sharia court that they heard Sharif ibn Sheikh Talha when he said that he would commit adultery with the beautiful and sexy girl and impregnate her with his child before the rains of the following fall season. It has been exactly 6 months since the Arab boy made that obscene vow. When the woman who made the great discovery, who was called Sit al-Banat, was questioned about the girl being sincere, she said with the bone of her tongue that she was in her 6th month of pregnancy. Everyone put the blame on our honorable Lord. Sharif tried to enter through the front door, but the blessed Imam closed it in his face. The lover, Al-Wulhan Sharif, had 2 options, either to kidnap the girl and run away with her because she was his lover, something a good Arab boy like him would not do, or to make her pregnant with a forbidden or Wad Haram child. Now the main concern of the people is what Maulana will do. He will not be able to kill the girl because she has a great responsibility and trust hanging around his neck. He would not be able to keep her in his sacred abode until she gave birth to the illegitimate child. The only option remaining for the blessed Imam is to force Sharif bin Sheikh Talha to marry the pregnant girl, whose body he defiled with his adultery without a permissible Islamic marriage. But no Arab boy in the city of El Fasher would ever marry a girl who became pregnant before marriage. She has now become like a prostitute, and has a forbidden love interest, or an adulterous child in her defiled womb. No one can live with a prostitute and raise an illegitimate child in a Muslim society. Moreover, the adulterous boy and adulterous girl must be flogged with 100 lashes each by the Sharia court in a public place, and a group of believers must witness their torment, according to the commandment of the Holy Quran. Chapter 11. Heavenly Ababil Birds. A month, a week, and one day have passed since the woman called Sit al-Banat revealed the scandal of Wad al-Haram's presence in the house of the Imam of the Grand Mosque in the city of El Fasher in western Sudan. Each woman used a chart as a table to count the days. Some women used black charcoal as a marker to record the days in their timetables, while others asked their children, boys and girls, to steal chalk from their schools. Every woman wished that our honorable Lord and his honorable wife would not discover the pregnancy until the child was born. For this reason, many of them included in their 5 daily prayers a request to God to blind the eyes of the blessed family. Some of them asked for the divine promise in the throne verse in Surah Al-Baqarah that God would build a dam, or a wall behind and in front of our Lord and his wife's eyes and blind them from the view of the pregnant girl until she delivered her haram baby. Other women who were less desirous of evil called on the holy names of some of righteous saints of Allah who had died years ago. If our blessed Imam and his righteous wife found out about the forbidden pregnancy, they would not throw the girl away from their now defiled holy home, or slay her in an honor killing, but rather keep her until the child sees the light of the day of his delivery. However, men have different attitudes and expectations. They wanted to find someone who was bold enough and feared no one but God, whom they could send to the eminent Imam, Maulana Abdul Razak. But not a single person is ready to convey such ugly news to his religious leader. After much discussion and consultation, the men reached a collective agreement. They learned that Maulana's son-in-law, a representative in the General Parliament in Khartoum City, was coming to El Fasher city soon. They decide to confront him with the scandal and ask him to discuss it with his father-in-law. On the same day that the representative arrived from the capital city, some pious men visited him and, in a sad and polite manner, expressed the shameful conception to him. The son-in-law was so upset that he decided to approach his father-in-law on the same day and confront him with the ugly news. Like Omar bin al-Khattab, when he heard that his sister had converted to Islam, the son-in-law rushed out of his house in a state of anger and headed to his father-in-law. This man had won the elections and secured a seat in parliament because of Maulana's speeches and reputation. Therefore, the scandal of the father of his wife may jeopardize his political career, and he may be expelled from his honorable position and not win any future elections. To avoid such a disastrous stigma, the MP decided to give Maulana 2 options rather than a third. Either he expels the pregnant girl with the forbidden baby from his house, and thus leaves her and her illegitimate child to go to hell, or he forces Sharif, the son of Sheikh Talha, to marry her within 24 hours. He is determined not to give way to any argument, withdrawal, or change in these 2 options. To prove to his father-in-law that he was serious and firm in his decision, the deputy took 6 men with him as witnesses. Before leaving his house to head to Dar al-Arkam, the angry politician tied his long dagger, which resembled the Shodal al-Hadandawi of the Fuzzy-Wuzzy people of eastern Sudan, to his left shoulder and carried his large stick, which weighed 25 pounds, in his right hand. With this heavy and large stick, which was like the staff of the prophet Moses, peace be upon him, he could divide the Red Sea and kill the great dragon if they tried to block his way. If he had a double-edged sword, he would have taken it. The other 6 male witnesses must run to keep up with his pace. Al-Sab is the name given to the member of parliament from the day he was born. Sometimes, some lucky people got names that turned out to suit their personalities for better or worse as they grew up. Mr. Difficult has such a lucky name. He is a perfect example of the meaning of his name Al-Sab, a tough, rough, serious, sharp man, always angry, looking for trouble and fighting wherever he goes. His presence caused fear, and his absence created terror in the souls of those who hated him. When he walked quickly, and when he spoke, he made people listen, and when he was struck, his blow caused severe pain, and sometimes his punch was fatal, like an angry wrestler. Maulana Abdul Razak had all the qualities of his son-in-law, and excelled in education. Imam Al-Fadil graduated from Al-Azhar University in Cairo City, Egypt. This prestigious institute of Islamic learning has recently become known for producing Muslim terrorist leaders. Imam Abdul Razak spent a third of his life in this great Islamic center of learning, before returning to Sudan to become the great Imam of the largest mosque in the city of El Fasher in the Darfur region. Maulana claimed to have the same amount of knowledge as the great defender of the Islamic religion, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali of his time, who was known as Hujjat al-Islam. However, it would be unfair to call Maulana Sheikh Abdul Razak anything less than a scholar of the 21st century after the Pakistani scholar Abu al-Maududi, who holds the honor of the greatest Muslim scholar of the 20th century. Abu al-Maududi is considered the father of all modern Islamic terrorist groups, because he declared all the peaceful Muslims of his contemporaries to be infidels because they abandoned the absent Islamic duty of jihad for the sake of God to spread the Islamic religion with violence, just as the Messenger of Allah Muhammad and his Mujahideen companions did, who spread Islam by the point of the sword among the Christian infidels, the brothers of apes and pigs the Jews, and the cursed Hindu polytheists. They reached Spain in the west and India in the east. No one will deny his claim if the Imam, the scholar Sheikh Abdul Razak, says that he is more knowledgeable about the laws of Islamic Sharia, its philosophy, and theology than the Egyptian scholar Sheikh Metwali al-Sahrawi or Taha Hussein. The honorable Imam of the largest mosque in the city of El Fasher is a huge man with a body like the Palestinian giant Goliath, who was killed by the Jewish shepherd, the little Hebrew boy David. Maulana is tall, and has a larger head than the rest of his body. This large head is always covered with a white turban, and attached to the longest beard a Muslim man can ever grow. It seemed that his long beard surpassed that of the Prophet Muhammad in terms of length and density. His eyes are large and red, and his flat nose covers half of his face. He always carries along a prayer beads most of the time. He is like his son-in-law in that he never goes outside his bounds without carrying a thick rod in his hand, and a sharp dagger fastened to his left shoulder. No one ever saw Maulana without a big turban on his head except his wives. On that day for the first time, people could see his bald head without a turban. Maulana's head without a hood resembles a dalaba. One may want to know what this word is. I was born and raised in Sudan, spent a third of my life in India, visited Egypt and Lebanon, and now live in the West, but I have never seen dalaba in any of those countries except in my own fatherland. I doubt whether God actually designed or created this kind of large fruit. I also doubt that this huge fruit exists in any country other than Sudan. If the story of Tayr Ababil mentioned in the Holy Quran is true, then these heavenly birds used these fruits as stones to destroy the forces of Abraha, king of Ethiopia. I believe that Allahu Akbar was so annoyed with Abraha and his great elephant named Mahmud that he showed his divine vengeance on them in a way that will be remembered forever and ever. It is most likely that God commanded his heavenly birds to pick fruits from the bitter tree of hell called Al-Zakkum, and to stone the invading Abyssinian army that came to destroy the Black Kaaba, which is the house of God in the city of Mecca. Unfortunately, some Zakkum fruits accidentally fell into Sudan and grew as delayed trees. If you want to curse someone in Sudan, tell him that his head looks like a dalaba. If he doesn't kill you, he will never talk to you again. The racist Sudanese Arabs call the dalaba fruits the mangoes of slaves, and they mean the black Africans from Darfur, the Nuba Mountains, and South Sudan. When Maulana's bald head appeared at his door that day, he looked like the dalaba, or a mango of black slave Negroes. After the relatives exchanged some obligatory Islamic religious greetings, such as peace, mercy, and blessings of God Almighty upon you, Mr. Al-Saab revealed to his father-in-law the purpose of his visit. Your daughter Ruqayya Abdul Razak will be divorced, and she will be forbidden as a wife forever to me, just like my mother, if you do not expel the infidel Dinka girl from your house or force the men who impregnated her in a haram sex to marry her immediately. Maulana's eyes scanned the faces of the other 6 witnesses, and he understood that his angry son-in-law was serious in his threat and demand. The expression on the Imam's face showed that he was in serious trouble. His incredibly angry son-in-law put him in a corner from which he could only get out with a sacrifice. Mr. Saab raised his voice and made his demand again. There is a moment of silence so terrible one could hear a pin drop. Then Maulana spoke in a deep voice, his eyes turned downward. No man has slept with the Dinka girl Ikhlas and made her pregnant with a child except me. The hard master stared at our Lord, his mouth wide open and his eyes bulged out of their holes, and then he shouted, "But you have 4 wives already in your possession. How do you sleep with another woman without divorcing one of your wives and marrying her legally?" Maulana leaned on his doorframe and said, "I do not have to marry Ikhlas because she is my slave girl and Jariya, and has become the possession of my right hand." When Maulana and Sayyid Saab exchanged those few sentences, the other 6 men who came as witnesses felt one after the other like pillars of snow that had melted when heavy rain fell on them. They couldn't believe their ears when they heard that their religious leader, the Imam of the largest mosque in their city, impregnated a girl and admitted that he did not marry her, but decided to have a child with her through adultery.